Welcome to the Aperture Science Enrichment Center. By coming here, you've already agreed to participate in tests that will advance science for generations. While we do not ensure your safety from any short-term injuries or lasting effects from the tests, we do guarantee that every action will be closely documented and used for future endeavors. If you do happen to feel any pain or discomfort within the duration of testing, please notify a nearby observer and they will be sure to make note of it. With that out of the way and your legal releases signed, there's nowhere to go but forward. Off you go. Alright, first things first. There's gonna be spoilers in this video. I mean, no duh, the game's been out for over a decade, but I know there's at least one person here who's just gotten the game on sale recently and hasn't played it yet. In that case, congrats my guy. You just came across one of my top 5 games, and I'm about to explain why. Portal 2 has definitely earned that position through its own merit, from bridging visual storytelling with character dynamics. But before I head into the intricacies of each aspect, I should give some context to those new to the series. Let's answer the basic questions and get you familiar with our subject matter by recapping the original, where we first woke up in Aperture Laboratories.
Hello, and again, welcome to the Aperture Science Computer-Aided Enrichment Center. We hope your brief detention in the relaxation vault has been a pleasant one. Your specimen has been...
Let's not waste any time. This is GLaDOS. She'll be guiding you through the testing chambers and overseeing your progress. She cares not for your human concerns like fatigue, dehydration, and constitutional rights. Her only concern is efficient test results and the preservation of her facility.
Please refrain from... Turn back. The portal will open in 3, 2, 1.
This is you, an abandoned mute named Shell with nothing but an orange jumpsuit and some springy boys on her feet.
Smelly humans.
That's terrible.
You've quite literally got no option but to move forward though, and without any prior knowledge, you follow GLaDOS' instructions. As you progress through some pretty basic puzzles to familiarize yourself with the game mechanics, you eventually acquire the Aperture Science handheld portal. It's a fucking portal gun. You go pew, and boom, now there's a portal. Defy the laws of physics to make literal doors. Welcome to the entirety of the series. The rest of the test chambers rely on this mechanic to solve puzzles. The facility doesn't grow more friendly, however, and there become more hints that GLaDOS has gone from robotically indifferent to possibly hostile.
The appropriate chamber for this testing sequence is currently unavailable. It has been replaced with a live fire course designed for military androids. The Enrichment Center apologizes for the inconvenience and wishes you the best of luck.
Unfortunately, you're rather isolated in this center, especially since every observation room you see is empty. So in order to keep you in high spirits and efficiently testing, she offers you cake upon completion.
Cake and brief counseling will be available at the conclusion of the test.
Screw those random scribbles saying that the cake is a lie. They don't know what they're talking about. I'm getting cake for being a good little subject. I should mention that when introduced to the warning signs in the beginning, the cake symbol is listed there as well. Those scribbles I referred to are proof, however, that there have been other people before you, and they most likely lost their minds. The only other anthropomorphized being you meet is a companion cube, but they don't seem much for conversation. You also need to kill it in order to get cake, so... Luckily, forced euthanization isn't punishable by the flames of hell, and you're not as dense as the cube you sent into the Inferno 5 minutes ago. Using a handy-dandy portal gun at your disposal and a conveniently placed wall, You escape your demise and start hunting down the bitch of an AI who tried to kill you, all while she tries to tell you that it was a joke. There you go, you escaped.
Thank you for assuming the potty escort submission position.
Alright, I clearly glossed over a couple bits from Portal, but that's mainly because the first game focuses more on the mechanics of the puzzle than a narrative forming a cohesive storyline. When I played through this a second time and took notes, I noticed a lot more of the verbal puns and Easter eggs that I missed previously. There were also bits of dialogue and key events that were called back to in the sequel, such as the Bring Your Daughter to Work day, and GLaDOS killing all the scientists with neurotoxin. Portal's a great game and all, but it can't hold a candle to its successor, who took the same concept and blew it out of the water. The ending musical sequence is fantastic though, and I'm glad they brought it back. While we take a small intermission, I will mention that there was a graphic novel in between the games that explains how you wake up back again in Aperture. It also gives the accounts of a scientist who dragged himself through the attacks of GLaDOS and preserved Shell in hopes for the future. He's also the schizophrenic who wrote on the walls and tried to warn you in the first game. Go read it if you want more. I want to get to the main topic. While you were asleep, someone upgraded you to a fully furnished hotel room, complete with art and smooth jazz.
Smooth jazz will be deployed in 3, 2, 1. For 9999999. This courtesy call is to inform you
Anyone
that
in
all
there?
test subjects should vacate the enrichment
Hello?
center immediately. Any test subject
Are you
not emerging
gonna
from
open the
suspension
door
at this time
at any
will be
time?
assumed to have exercised his or her rights
Hello?
to remain in extended
No.
relaxation for the
Are you
duration
gonna open this
of the
door?
destruction of this facility.
It's
If you have
fairly
questions
urgent.
or concerns
Oh God, you look good.
Meet Wheatley, your caretaker. He's an idiot. To quote, he's the product of the greatest minds of a generation, specifically engineered to be the dumbest idiot. He's also a wonderful change of pace from the first game, and while you still can't talk, he easily provides both sides of any conversation. Unfortunately, he's British.
Some right proper British.
It's Tuesday. It's Tuesday, isn't it?
But beggars can't be choosers. Wheatley is clearly better versed in human interactions, and while sharing GLaDOS's disgust of humans, he also hates his job and wants to leave Aperture Laboratories. Luckily, there's an escape lift to the surface, located in the main chamber. You know, where you killed GLaDOS.
Probably ought to bring you up to speed on something right now. In order to escape, we're going to have to go through her chamber, and she will probably kill us. If you want to just call it quits, and we could just sit here forever, that's an option. Option A, sit here, do nothing. Option B, go through there, and if she's alive, she'll almost certainly kill us. Okay, I'm gonna lay my cards on the table. I don't want to do it. I don't want to go in there. Don't go in there. She's off. She's off. Don't panic over. She's off. All fine. On we go.
Power up initiated.
Okay, don't panic. All right, stop panicking. I can still stop this. Oh, there's a password. Okay, it's fine. I'll just hack it. Not a problem. A. Okay. A C. Wait, did I do B? Do you have a pen? Start writing these down.
Power up complete.
I don't. Okay. Listen. All right, new plan. Act natural. Act natural. We've done nothing wrong. Hello.
Oh, it's you. But I think we can put our differences behind us. There's just one small thing we need to take care of first.
Alright, so as much as the frigid bitch GLaDOS was in the first Portal, she's the freaking star of the show in Portal 2. Her personality and backstory become more fleshed out, and her sarcastic quips make about 75% of the best quotes in the game. Deciding to put differences aside in the name of science, GLaDOS decides to continue testing, with the intention to continue until you die. This is probably a good time to note that the atmosphere of Aperture Laboratories has transformed to that of a slowly degrading facility, especially in the lower parts, and it only starts to take better shape once GLaDOS takes back control. Abandoned or not though, the graphics are a huge step up and it looks amazing. Keeping with continuity, she leads you back through the same final test chamber from the first game. This kind of stuff pops up everywhere. While you return to testing, you'll find out that Wheelie isn't actually dead, and he eventually makes contact and decides to break you out during one of the test chambers. He might be an idiot, but he knows enough to help you escape.
I know I'm early, but we have to go right now. Walk casually toward my position, and we'll go shut it.
Look, Metal Ball, I can hear you.
Run! I don't need to do the voice. Run! 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 Come on, I'm closing the doors. Okay, quick recap. We are escaping. All right, that's what's happening now. We're escaping. So you're doing great. Just keep running. Quick word about the future plans that I've got in store. We're going to shut down her turret production line, all right? Turn off her neurotoxin and then confront her. Again, though, for the moment, run!
You make your way towards the turret production line, and nah, these boys need their own quick section. Turrets are the underdog kings of Aperture. Drip, supreme. Ammo capacity, maxed out. Portable and deadly. If you need them to protect something you hold dear, well, they've got an empathy chip for that. You want them to murder whoever they see? They also have an empathy suppressor chip installed, so you can be sure that while they will kill you, they'll feel bad about it.
Gotcha.
They're also technically smarter than Wheatley, but more on that later. The goal is to screw up their production though. So you save this mentally disabled turret from the incinerator, hack into the control room, and make him chief of production. And he makes sure all of his defective, lazy friends make it past the quality check. After that, you cut the tubes of the neurotoxin generator with a very conveniently placed laser, and you're heading right back to the center chamber.
Hello!
I hate you so much.
Once GLaDOS realizes what you've done, you decide that, hey, you've been here long enough, you deserve a promotion. Well, congratulations on becoming a stalemate associate. You can now replace her with the very convenient moron you brought with you. He now has control over the facility, and is more than willing to call you an elevator to leave. What a nice ending. You get to go live your life, and the AI core with an inferiority complex can enjoy his newfound power.
Actually, why do we have to leave right now?
It gets worse. GLaDOS, now thoroughly pissed off, decides to share that Wheatley was literally designed by genius scientists to be the most idiotic core created in order to make her less intelligent. She quite literally calls him a tumor, remembering how he was attached to her to hamper her cognitive ability and make her less of a threat to scientists. Surprisingly, the power-hungry ceiling dildo doesn't take this well.
I am not a moron!
And consequently transfers GLaDOS to a potato battery. Another reference, but I can't be asked. And despite the fact that you haven't said anything, he sends both of you to the Shadow Realm.
Into this pit! could a moron do that? Uh-oh.
Now, as I wrap up the second half of the game, I'll do my best to make note of what's important down here. For the first time, there's no narrator or guiding voice to fill the silence, and you find yourself not exactly sure where to go next. Alright, fair enough. There's some hints. I will say though, if you do take the time to slow down and look for details in this forgotten area, you'll be surprised to find a relatively coherent storyline for a failing research laboratory that initially had a promising start. I might skip over a few things as I finish the game's storyline, but I'll certainly be back for the analysis. So, turns out that pit was not bottomless, and you stumble across the remains of what used to be Aperture Science. When you first breach the initial testing facility, you're greeted by one of the best businessmen and supporting characters of the franchise.
We've already met one another on the limo ride over, so let me introduce myself. I'm Cave Johnson. I own the place. That eager voice you heard is the lovely Carolyn, my assistant.
As awesome as it is to explore the barely functioning facility, and it is, there isn't much to refer to in terms of gameplay. The two most relevant things you need to take away right now are that A, GLaDOS, now Potato-S, who you conveniently reunite with, was an AI developed from a former Aperture Science employee named Carolyn. And B, you learn how 3 new gels work that will help you in the endgame.
This first test involves something the lab boys call repulsion gel.
Discount Flubber bounces you, disregarding any laws of physics by actually bouncing you higher than your initial height. Speed Slime somehow multiplies your momentum exponentially and basically lets you run/slide super fast. Liquid Moon allows portals to be made out on any solid surface it covers, just not glass. As you move higher up in the old facility, you'll pipe these to the surface, and in doing so, we'll learn more about the story of Aperture. When you do make it back into the more recognizable facility again, Wheatley isn't exactly hard to find, and he's more frustrated than ever due to a lack of competent test subjects at his disposal.
How can you not do the one thing you're designed for?
Luckily, you turn up with a flimsy plan to put GLaDOS back in charge, and he now has someone to test his new chambers on.
It's alright, everything's good, I just invented some more tests.
This is one of my tests.
Not entirely, not entirely. Look at the word test there on the wall, that's brand new.
In her place, Wheatley has neglected literally everything that maintains the stability of the facility, and because of that, the place is falling apart. Again. These new chambers are a combination of the gels we brought up, and what we can basically call tractor beams. However, the satisfaction wired into Wheatley for completing tests starts to wear off, and he begins to look for alternative ways to get the synthesized dopamine. As he moves you closer in his lair in an attempt to draw more of a euphoric response to testing, he abruptly stops caring about your results and mentions there was a surprise for you in a few chambers.
You two are gonna love this big surprise. In fact, you might say you're going to love it to death. You're gonna love it until it kills you till you're dead. All right, I don't know whether you're picking up on what I'm saying there, but
Yes, thanks. We get it.
What can I say? He's a moron, so subtlety isn't his strong suit. Whatever, let's get to it.
Well, this is the part where he kills us.
hello, this is the part where I kill you. Had a bit of a brainwave. There I was, smashing some steel plates together, and I thought to myself, yeah, it's deadly, but what's missing? What's missing? And I thought lots of sharp bits welded onto the flat. Aiming for. No, don't do that. Stand right here. Stand. Where'd you go? Come back, come back.
What is it with power-hungry AI and leaving escape routes in their killing chambers while they monologue? I mean, there's literally always just a wall ready for you to leave through. Whatever. Maybe it's hardwired into their system as soon as they become corrupt. Welcome to part 2 of Running from the Big Bad Ceiling Dildo, British edition. This time it features the conveniently placed tubes of gel from earlier and literal bombs. The ascent back into the central chamber is less tedious than the last, and you'll find that while the rest of the facility is crumbling to the ground and almost at a nuclear meltdown, the interior seems pretty well kept, and with a distinct lack of portal surfaces, showing that Wheatley did indeed learn from watching GLaDOS' death tape. Luckily, he's finally grasped the concept that something might be wrong with the facility, so Wheatley also lays out a very cordial agreement of ceasefire after battling in order to fix whatever's
So let's call
haywire.
that 3 minutes and then a minute break, but we should leave allegedly 2 minutes to figure out how to shut down whatever's starting all the fires. So anyway, that's the itinerary.
Alright, I'm running out of ways to say the word conveniently at this point. Of course, there's bombs available that you can use to hit a tube carrying Liquid Moon, so you're not totally out of luck. Using the areas covered in portal gel, and having corrupt cores airdropped to you by GLaDOS, you're able to attach enough cores to the point where Wheatley is corrupt enough for another core transfer, just like you did before.
Warning. Core corruption at 100%. Stalemate detected.
A little earlier.
Stalemate resolution associate. Please press the stalemate resolution button.
Do not press that button. No! Do not do it! I forbid you to press it! Don't press that button! Don't press it! Come part 5! Booby trap the stalemate button! What? Are you still alive? You are joking! You have got to be kidding me! Well, I'm still in control, and I have no idea how to fix this place. Oh, you had to play bloody cat and mouse, didn't you? While people were trying to work. Yeah, well now we're all gonna pay the price, because we're all gonna bloody die. Space! Let go! We're in space! Let go! Let go! I'm still connected! I can pull myself in! I can still fix this!
I already fixed it, and you are not coming back.
Oh no! Change your plans! Hold on to me! Tighter!